the competition within itself is almost a cleansing feature. It's almost like running water over rocks, right? If the water is running too slow, you're going to collect some algae, you know? But because there's a mixture and there's a little bit of a torrent within, there's almost this like natural kind of filtration, right? And that's a natural law as well, right? Like in order to filter out water, or in order, you know, how does the oceans filter itself out? Like what do the ecosystems do to kind of cleanse itself, you know, both of too much life or too little life? There's always a cycle of birth and death within that. So do you think it's possible that our cycle of humanity, both having birth and death in like a metaphorical way, the messiness of humanity, the poor choices, that cycle of birth and death is a strength?
I think every species wants to preserve itself. I think that's like at the root of a lot of what we're doing. There's a lot of things that humans do that kind of don't fit in line with that goal, which is nuclear weapons and the threat of using those nuclear weapons and kind of blasting each other into oblivion. Yeah. So I think human beings, you know, other animals do go to war with each other. I think chimpanzees actually have really brutal...
Dolphins.
Dolphin wars? I gotta check that out.
Ants.
Ant wars. So I think it's natural, but I think the way that human beings have gotten so good at eliminating one another or conquering or subjecting one another, it kind of, in the long run, like it will allow one breed or one tribe of human to strive, but in the long run, it's going to lead to our extinction. And I think that I think that these things, like I always say something, and this is something I always want, you love the Roman Empire.
Oh, love it. Can't talk enough about it.
And I want to posit this with you.
Okay.
Imagine nuclear weapons had been created during the Roman Empire. Think about the level. Now, I want you to think about the level of morals and ethics. Right. Imagine you got nuclear warheads and Caligula is your Roman emperor.
Oh my God.
The world would have been destroyed, right?
Destroyed, easily.
So I always say to myself, like, one thing I'm grateful is that all of our technological advancements have always magically been parallel to our moral advancements. Like, I don't think the people during the Roman Empire could have handled nuclear weapons. I think that they were not operating at a sophisticated enough moral level to understand what it is that they're doing. So I always say to myself, like this technology is good, but I always find it fascinating. It always seems to go hand in hand with what we're capable of holding and dealing with. So I'm hoping that pattern continues. I hope that we're not introduced to some new technology which we're not morally capable of handling.
You know, it's interesting how this moral dilemma isn't a law. You know, like there's one law within humanity that is always apparent to me, which is that there's always good and evil in balance. Everything that we know, see, touch, feel, think has the same balance. Like, for example, at the center of our universe, our mixture of gas, which has somehow created this place, which is fucking crazy to think about. In the dead center of that is a black hole eating it all up. So at the very heart, you have the most destructive force we've ever discovered. But around it is the most celestial life we've ever found. I feel like this is kind of a thing with every single aspect of being earthborn, is that you always have this discussion between destruction and creation. You know, it's like we're self-destructing ourselves, but creating these amazing technologies, or even like what you're saying, these moral discoveries within the process. And our struggle between those 2 points is really our human story.
There's something beautiful about destruction. People fear destruction because we have a tendency to try and preserve ourselves and preserve the way it is. But sometimes the way it is killing us. It's destroying. Like if older civilization, like if the Roman Empire had never fallen, you know, we would never have gotten to the United States. You know, so like everything that gets destroyed, something better, or at least hopefully something better, takes its place. And I think sometimes we're afraid to destroy something that's not working for us. Could be even just a marriage or a relationship, because we're afraid of the unknown. I think human beings have a great fear of uncertainty. So we try and preserve. But destruction has an element. It's important. You know, you need to destroy old habits, old tendencies, old behaviors. So destruction is not something we should run from. It's something that we should embrace. And I'm not advocating nuking the whole world.
No, definitely not. I know you well enough to do that. And just make sure this mic is up to your mouth.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, it's interesting you brought up the Roman Empire and the destruction of that. And I know you like history just like I do.
Sure.
What is up with the Roman eagle, like being reborn in multiple time periods?
Oh, for the United States? Yeah.
Well, even more than that.
Yeah.
Right? You have ancient Rome, then you have Napoleon.
It's on the Mexican flag too, right?
Oh, you're right. It is on the Mexican flag. Then you have Napoleon carrying literally the eagle standard. Then the eagle standard goes to Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Then from Nazi, you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is a total right angle from what we were talking about. But it's kind of like we're talking about cycles, really, right? Like birth, death, birth, death. I find it interesting how humanity finds these patterns that need to be replicated. And I don't know how much of it is actually conscious, you know, and, you know, how much forgiveness should we be giving ourselves as a species to allow these kind of unconscious patterns? Like, is that the hallmark of humanity?
I think that, you know, this is why I'm a student of history, and I encourage people to study history as much as possible, because if you see one of these pernicious patterns reemerging in some new form, if you're aware of history, you can kind of spot it out and be like, well, this kind of seems something similar that was tried out in ancient Rome, and maybe we ought to not go here, because the one constant is our human nature, I would say. So I think that yes, the technology and yes, the forms of government change, but our human nature pretty much remains static throughout all of these events. So if we know human nature, we know what systems are going to work and not work. So I think it's just a question of being vigilant and being aware of what's been tried in the past and failed miserably and what has worked.